Right, I'll kick off and get started. Good morning and welcome to this Ultima webinar. My name's John Burkett. I'm one of the senior technical consultants here at Ultima. I specifically focus on Microsoft UC, which predominantly these days means Microsoft Teams, but previously I've looked after Skype and OCS and Link, and kind of helping people with migrations at the moment. In today's session, I'm just going to go through some of the new features that have been released since the last of these sessions, and also kind of pull up some of the features which are either currently in preview or are on the roadmap and will be coming up. A couple of quick bits of housekeeping before we get started. You should all have access to chat, so if you do have any questions, please do put them in there. Depending on how long I talk for, I'll either answer the questions at the end of the session or pick them up, take them offline, and kind of reply back to you individually. This meeting is being recorded. You will be sent a link to it after the session, and you will also be sent a copy of the slide deck in PDF format. So I think that's everything. Before we actually dive into the content, one final reminder about this. Skype for Business Online is going end of life end of this month, basically. So yeah, Microsoft have again stepped up their messaging about this. They're doing a lot of automatic tenant upgrades. So if you do need to stay on Skype for Business Online for any reason, please do keep an eye out for those. If you do need an extension for any reason, they have now relented a little bit and are giving 3-month extensions if you do ask for them. You do need to provide justification around this. So this is typically going to be for customers who are using third-party integrations. So whether they're using attendant consoles or plugging into paging systems or have third-party applications which are relying on the Skype SDKs. They're the kind of justifications that they're accepting at the moment. But yeah, it is in there as an option. If you are on Skype for Online, please do reach out to your account manager ASAP, and we can do our best to help you with that. The Skype for Business Online PowerShell module is now fully retired and has actually stopped working. So if you have any scripts or automations which are using that, please do update them so you can kind of continue to get service. One that again has been messaged out to Microsoft, but I just wanted to pick up on it again. They are changing the behavior of guest access and how it works. Specifically, as it's not for on-prem yet. Well, there is, but it will be on the standard life cycle. What I'll do is after the call, I'll pull that information out and send it over to you. On the guest access side of things, yeah, sorry, they're making a subtle change to it. So previously, when you disabled guest access, all the guests got removed from the team rosters as well, which became an issue if you then re-enabled guest access. You basically have to go through and re-add all the guests into the relevant channel. As of the end of this month, if you do switch off guest access, it will still stop guests accessing and being able to kind of see the teams and the channels, but the guests don't actually get removed from the team's roster, which makes it a more streamlined process. If you then re-enable guest access, all those old guests will get their access back. I think this is partly end user to make things a bit more streamlined there, but also on the back end, it takes some of the load off the system, so Microsoft aren't having to churn through and kind of constantly moving and adding people to the team's rosters, which adds a load to the system. So again, just something to be aware of if you are using guest access at the moment. There are a couple of offers which Microsoft are still running. One around free audio conferencing until the end of this year. and then the business voice promotions, they're still running discounts on those, I believe. So this is if you are sub 300 users stroke seats, they are offering discounts on those licenses. If you're interested in either of those, please do reach out to your account manager. They can get you a lot more information about them, but then also look at getting you onto those promotions so you can take advantage of those. So yeah, that was just a little bit of important things before we kind of dive into the main meat of the session. I'll start with meetings. Again, quite a lot going on here. We spoke last session about the webinar functionality, and at the time the attendant dashboard was a coming soon element. This is now making its way out into production, so it's showing up in about half of the tenants which I look at and have access to. Basically, so in addition to being able to download the roster, you also now have a shiny page where the sales and marketing folks can come in, have a look at attendance and some other metrics around there. So again, just making it a bit more user friendly and kind of fleshing out the WebEx experience. Again, then there's some kind of small quality of life improvements here. We've obviously had raise hands for about 6 months now, 8 months maybe, and you used to have to lower them individually. Again, quality of life, you can now force everyone's hands down if you are so inclined. Chat bubbles has now also rolled out. So this basically means I don't have the chat panel open at the moment, but if people send me messages, it will pop up, as the screenshot says, in kind of a little pop-up bubble. You can control this and turn this off if you are kind of doing dedicated presenting and you think it'll be distracting. But again, just a nice little quality of life improvement. As we saw on the previous screen, we now have the lock meeting option, which again, a lot of people have been asking for a long time. So it's good to see it in the product now. And what that looks like is you'll click the button, you will get a warning stroke splash screen up saying, are you sure you want to do this? And just to be clear, when you lock a meeting, if someone tries to join, they don't get put into the lobby if you have lobbying enabled. They just get a message saying this meeting is locked, you aren't able to join it. So it's not as though you can corral people in the lobby. Once it's locked, no more people are joining. You also do have a kind of the notification bar. So this is very similar to when you start recording. You get the bar saying recording has started. You also get a bar saying that the meeting has now been locked. You'll also see the little padlock icon in the top left of your meetings, just as a reminder. You can then unlock meetings as well. So again, going into that same kind of context menu on the 3 dots and choose to unlock. And again, you'll get a splash screen and then the meeting will be unlocked and people can join as they normally would. So again, it's a feature I know I get asked for semi-regularly at least. So good to have that in the product as well now. Spotlighting multiple users. So previously you could right click and kind of pin one person's video stream as the main one. So again, good for kind of solo presenting sessions. If you were doing slightly more advanced multiple presentation streams, it was a bit limiting. You can now, with the new multiple spotlight, have up to 7 people spotlighted. So again, nice little improvement they're making there. PowerPoint Live. So PowerPoint Live is what I'm using at the moment, actually. It's the ability to actually upload a PowerPoint deck into Microsoft Teams. So you don't have to keep PowerPoint open and you're not actually using PowerPoint presenting mode. Again, a couple of quality life improvements here. You have inking and laser pointing. So if you want to highlight particular elements, you've now got laser pointers available to you and pens. The presenting modes have also now started to make it out into the wild. Again, I spoke about these a little bit during the last session when they weren't available. These are a couple of options around, in effect, overlaying your video over the PowerPoint slide. So normally you would have your slide and then your kind of video next to it. The other presenting mode, so the one with the little person over it here, will actually overlay your video in the bottom right corner with your kind of background removed. So again, more options, potentially a little bit more professional presenting options available there. And again, these have rolled out to most of the environments I have access to. A couple of them still haven't got them, so I would give it to the end of the month if it isn't currently showing up in your tenants. Presenter mode is also available if you're doing regular screen sharing as well. You get the options on the control bar at the top. Mobile experience wise, large gallery view is now available. So what this means is you'll get the kind of 49 video images, and they'll be split into groups of 10, and then you can swipe left and right to get a better video experience on the mobile. There are a couple of requirements around that. It's only iOS version 13 plus and Android version 9 plus, and the device has to have more than 4 gig of RAM on it. So again, just something to be aware of. If you have any users kind of on slightly lower end devices, they still might not be able to make use of that. Device audio sharing. So we've had this on the desktop app for about a year now. It's rolling out for both Android and iOS. So you'll, for example, if you share a video from your mobile into a Teams meeting and it has audio associated with it, you can now pipe that audio actually into the meeting, which again, it's just improving the parity between the different platforms and the user experience between the different platforms, which has got to be a good thing. Large gallery mode is coming to VDI. So again, a lot of the customers I work with, they're kind of in this hybrid state, some users on full fat machines, some users on VDIs. And that disparity in experience between being on a VDI versus being on a desktop was always a bit of a pain point for IT. But again, large video or large gallery is now coming to VDI, so that will give you up to 49 videos on the screen at one time. So yeah, again, nice little improvement and bringing parity between the platforms. Centrally managing background video images. So again, I want to say about a year and a half ago, they introduced the idea of background blurring and then actually being able to insert your own backgrounds. That escalated to users being able to upload their own images, which was fun and games for everyone. And this is kind of the third phase of this, where now you as an IT department can actually manage and control what images are available to end users, or what additional users images are available to end users. And that is, at the moment, this is a global control, so you can upload a set of images and it will be available to all users. My guess is it's going to become a more policy based in the future, but at the moment, if you're looking for that, you're looking under meetings, meeting policies, and you should have a button in the top right around customizing images. And when you go in there, you basically get a screen where you can kind of switch on custom backgrounds and then upload the specific images that you want. Once they're uploaded, for me, it took about 48 hours for the images to then actually start appearing in the end user clients. But yeah, once they were there, or once the kind of time had elapsed, users then started seeing the images as part of the ones that are available for them to download. So, and again, I know previously people were coming up with some quite clever options around using either Intune to push out the corporate images, or GPOs, or login scripts and that kind of thing. We now have a much slicker way to do it actually natively in the Teams Admin Center. So again, good option to have there. The uploader in here will also give you some advice around the kind of sizing of the images and what you want to be looking at there. And then finally, on kind of the meeting front, it's a couple of roadmap items that are kind of making their way through the pipe and hopefully should be with us soon. So with live events, you've been able to stream them out to third-party services, so things like YouTube and Twitch for a while. Through this RTMP streaming support, they're looking to extend that functionality out into, in quotes, regular meetings. So, for example, once that feature is available, we would be able to stream this meeting directly out to Twitch or our platform of choice. Music mode, so kind of in this vein of turning Teams into more of a broadcast and content delivery um, functionality, being able to use both higher quality audio and also higher quality mics is something that is working on, or something that they're working on at the moment. And this is going to include, from the kind of devices point of view, giving you more control. So being able to control the echo cancelling and the noise suppression, and even the gain in a lot more detail. And then also bumping up the audio sampling. So it'll be going up to 32 kilohertz sampling and 128 kilobits for the actual stream. So again, more professional, higher quality experience. And finally, auto meeting recording. So at the moment, uh, you can obviously go in and customize some of the criteria around the meeting on a per meeting basis. There is going to be another option around automatically starting recording. So I'm guilty of this, getting halfway through a meeting and cursing because I wanted to record it. This will basically be a tick box when you actually set up the meeting that you can auto start the recording. Users will still get prompted that recording is running. And again, this is a per meeting or per series of meeting settings. So it isn't like the old Skype plugin where you could set your meetings and there was a tick box to always use these settings. This has to be done per meeting. So it's just something to be aware of and remember. So yeah, again, the meeting experience is carrying on improving, and lots of both kind of small and large enhancements coming down the pipe. And it will be good to kind of just see it continuing to evolve and improve. So that was the meeting side of things. I was going to go into calling next. So there's, again, calling has been a bit quieter this quarter. I think a lot of their focus is being pulled into the Operator Connect side of things, which is kind of a very big deal and an improvement. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a sec. But from the actual calling point of view, walkie-talkie functionality is coming to the iOS platform. We've had this on Samsung Android mobiles for about a year now. Again, customers who had a use case for it absolutely love it. So this tends to be less of your traditional knowledge worker type scenarios. So where you've got people out on factory floors or store floors, having the walkie-talkie functionality as almost a replacement for the old tannoys and paging and announcement type systems. So again, it's just good to have that parity of being able to offer that functionality on iOS devices as well. The long-awaited calling or refreshed calling app is starting to roll out. It hasn't, again, this is one which is very much in the rollout phase. I think it's in about 3 environments that I've seen recently, with about another 7 or 8 still kind of pending, waiting for it to appear. And this is basically the reordering of the calling app, exposing the forwarding and simultaneously ringing functionality actually on the calling app rather than users having to dive into various different menus. So again, quality of life improvements and enhancements for the end user. The main point here is just the activity around updating any in-house user training documentation that you have. PSTN call recording, slight change to the way you are controlling this. They're moving this from being a meeting policy setting into the calling policy. So again, just gives you a bit more control, and it's, to be fair, a more appropriate place to put it. This is PowerShell only at the moment, so just be aware you won't see it in the admin center just yet. You'll have to connect to good old-fashioned PowerShell and configure it that way. An interesting one around call queues. So obviously with regular users, you've been able to control their caller ID for quite a while now. They're expanding that functionality out to when you dial out as a call queue. So being able to send the actual call queue number. Again, particularly important for service desks and support organizations where they want users calling back into a specific place. And that's done using a resource account. So you'll create a resource account with the particular number you want associated to it, and then associate that resource account into the call queue. So again, enhanced functionality. Big one for last quarter was Operator Console going into public preview. This is the enhanced and improved version. Well, you can still do the kind of old direct routing and bringing your own SIP trunking. This is a enhanced and slicker way of doing it. So previously, you would have to kind of have your discussion with your telco and get them to do some back end work. Operator Connect is about bringing that functionality and surfacing it directly actually in the Teams admin center. So you have a single place where you can come in and actually you can request connections and numbers directly in the portal now. So it isn't just about managing existing connections. Again, this is kind of the first crop of providers which are on the Operator Connect program. They're all going to be more joining this. For me, as a consultant who kind of works largely in the UK, the big one missing from me at the moment is Gamma. I can't imagine that they aren't working to join this program though. So yeah, again, if you've got a requirement for it, it's just, again, streamlining those things and improving and enhancing and bringing it all together in a single place. And what it'll also allow you to do, which is something that has been missing, is manage direct routing numbers actually through the Teams admin center, which is going to be a godsend to a lot of people who are doing direct routing implementations. On the team phone side of things, so these are the standalone IP phones, typically running Android with the custom Teams phone app running on top of them. Some enhancements again in this space. This is a feature which has been available on the desktop client, but if you are kind of joining a meeting and it detects that there's some other devices, or that you're already in the meeting, you can decide what you want to do. So whether you join the meeting in effect twice or whether it pulls the call out to this device. So again, options and flexibility coming in there. Background replacement. So we kind of spoke about being able to push background wallpapers in the context of meetings. If your Teams phone is a video phone, getting that background being able to push out to those devices as well. Live captioning. So again, desktop has had live captioning for a while now. That is rolling out as a feature onto the Teams phones as well. Again, looking at moving towards that feature parity. Dial pad for early media. So this is typically if you are dialing a number and it's fronted with an IVR or some sort of menuing type system. It was a little bit frustrating that the dial pad wasn't immediately there. They've now rectified that. So the dial pad appears a lot earlier and allows you to navigate through those options a lot more easily. Contacts from Outlook. Again, customers have been asking for this for at least a year, if not two. So it's good that you can actually now kind of from that phone do a read-only search of your Outlook contacts. Again, this is especially for, I guess, the exec level where they are logged in as themselves onto a hard phone, and also reception to a degree where they want to be able to kind of do that rich type of searching. So again, Not as much as there was last quarter, but again, still good solid progress. I think once the new Teams calling app finishes rolling out, we're then going to see a lot more focus on that Operator Connect, and also the Operator Connect for conferencing, which is kind of the enhanced or the conferencing side to the Operator Connect. So collaboration and chat. So this is more around focusing on the kind of one-to-one and also the actual teams and channels side of things. So literally just announced, I think this was on Wednesday, they're introducing these Fluid Live components into Teams chats. So previously you've been able to paste in a table from Excel, for example, into a chat or a channel. But once it was in there, it was a pretty static element. The Fluid Live actually allows other people to then come in and update and modify those tables or forms actually live in the chat window. So again, it's just improving the collaboration experience and giving extra functionality. And to be fair, you will have received a Microsoft notification about that, explaining it in a bit more detail and when it'll actually be available. Accessing offline files on Android does exactly what it says in the tin. You can now, from the Teams app, go in and flag a file as wanting to be kept offline. So then if you are in a poor data connection area or have no data connection, you can still access those files in a kind of offline mode. This is something that's been available on iOS since the beginning of the year. So it's just bringing that Android version up and into kind of feature parity. A couple of other ones which I'm just going to go through quite quickly. So the SharePoint previewing. So again, they've been looking to enhance the general channel and chat experience in the preview sense across documents. And now they're expanding that out into SharePoint. So you're going to get a richer preview, which is going to include obviously the kind of preview of the page, but then some also meta information about who the author are or who the author is, who the owner is, and when it was last modified. Excuse me. Customized branding for Yammer. If you're using Yammer, you can now start customizing those apps to apply your own coloring and branding to them. I'll be brutally honest, Yammer isn't a product I use hugely, stroke at all. So again, it's good to have, and if your organization is using Yammer, again, it's more flexibility and information built in there. Notifications for Mac OS, they're still keeping the kind of in Teams and Teams versions, but they've also opened them up to make use of the Mac notification center. So you can choose where you want to use them or where you want to see them, I should say, and then you're going to be in a more Mac style or the Mac notification area to control those. So again, bringing flexibility to the users and enhancing the Mac experience, which is got to be a good thing. Out of office in Teams. So we're all going to be very familiar with going into Outlook or going into OWA and setting out of office from there. This functionality is now also being exposed in Teams under the settings section. So you can come in here, click on the scheduling, and then you'll get a panel which again looks very similar to what you would see in Outlook or OWA, where you can set your kind of two messages for your internals and your externals and your scheduling. And when you save that, it will get pushed into Outlook. As with all things M365, there can be a little bit of a delay. I was only seeing about an hour's delay when I was playing around with this, which isn't too bad in the grand scheme of things. But again, this is playing into Microsoft's idea of trying to get people into Teams and then kind of live and breathe in Teams for their day-to-day work. And if you can now set your out of office, that's one less reason to go into Outlook or go into OWA. Supervised chat. This is mainly targeted at the education side of the market, and it is basically around controlling who can initiate and participate in instant message conversations. It's based on a role type setup. So there's currently 3 roles, which is the full permission, which is what you would give to your teachers, and this basically allows them to start and participate or initiate and participate in chats with anyone. You then have the restricted permission, which is generally where you would put your students. Um, and this basically means they can participate, but they can't actually start um, initiating chats. And then you have the limited permissions, which kind of sits somewhere in the middle. And this is more about, again, in the education context, your TAs, where they can start chats with your teachers and the people with full permissions, but they can't start chats directly with students, but they can be brought into chat conferences and things like that. So again, on the education side of things, being able to more strictly and tightly manage how those interactions are started and proceed has been something that they have been wanting and needing for a while. So again, it's good to see that coming into the product. If you do think or want to have a play around with it, there's kind of 2 bits you need to switch on. In your org-wide settings, under team settings, there is a tick box to enable role-based chat just as a thing at the global level. And then on the messaging policies, you'll actually need to go in and start assigning those or one of those 3 chat permissions, so either restricted, limited, or full, to your messaging policies, and then correctly assign out your messaging policies to your different users. So again, in an education setting, they typically have messaging policies which relate to teachers and non-teaching faculty and students, and then they can kind of manage and control it that way. So again, it's an interesting feature that's in there. More education skewed than kind of the commercial world where I spend most of my time. Approval templates. I have a full slide on this one. So the approval app has been in Teams for a while now. I want to say 3 or 4 months. This is where there are kind of some pre-canned workflows, so you can request a particular type of document and approval. Straight out of your Teams chat or channel, and it will kind of fire off a process in the background, which will start collecting those approvals and going from there. Previously, we'd been limited to kind of the Microsoft templates, the ones that they were providing. They've now opened this up a little bit, so we can actually start going in and via the new template button, you can actually then start coming in and either working from kind of Microsoft templates as a baseline, or the more interesting one for me is you can actually create these from scratch, and that will kind of start up a wizard. You need to select which team you want to associate a specific template to, but once you've done that, you then actually go into the builder where you're giving it kind of basic information. So a template name, a category. So if you want to categorize these and kind of have different types, again, this is where if you suddenly have, I don't know, 30 approval templates, making them a bit more easy for users to find by categorizing them is a good idea, and your obligatory description as to what's going on. You then have a very simple form designer type wizard. There's only 3 components at the moment. You can either do radial select boxes, you can put in a free text field, which is typically going to be justifications or any additional information, and that can either be a short or a long form text, and then you can also put on a date picker as well. All of these you can either tick them as required or not. So again, it's basic, but it gets most of that information kind of collected when you initiate the approval request. Once you've designed up your form, then there's some just workflow questions. So whether you want to mandate a particular file being attached to these requests, You can control how the approvers work. So whether it is in effect a static list of people, as the kind of screenshot here is configured for, or if you want to actually let the person who is raising the request select who their approval is going to be. Again, if you have multiple approvers, you can decide whether you want all of them to have to approve or none of them, or not none of them, or just kind of one of them. And then you can customize the responses a little bit if you're so inclined. Again, it's just kind of a bit of flexibility in there. Once you've done that, the users or the template will be published out, and at that point users can go into a chat message or a channel, typically click on the three little dots, search up the approvals app, and then submit it, and it gets automatically flagged out to the people who are listed as approvers, and they get a rich form where they can either approve or deny it. So again, for me, the approvals app has always been quite useful. Basically, all the work I do has to go through a formal approval process before it can be released. So having the approvals app to help manage that has made my life a lot easier, rather than just kind of blindly emailing out to people asking for reviews and things like that. So yeah, if you haven't played with the approvals app, and you can, well, I would suggest having a play with it either way. And then if there's kind of specific business use cases which you can come up with to kind of align to the technology, it's a good way. Once you're kind of familiar and happy with Teams as the basic platform, we can look at starting to enhance it and streamline business processes and kind of move to the next step and next phase of using Teams to enhance things further. From a security point of view, few things have kind of come out here which I just wanted to flag up. App risk evaluator. So for a long time now, we've been able to actually go into the Teams admin center, look at what permissions a app is using, and actually approve them at the global level. This is moving on to kind of the before you actually deploy an app or allow an app, you can now come in and look at the this is part of the cloud app security kind of area. So you can come in here and then actually on a per app basis look through a lot more detailed information about the kind of data and about the various security permissions that a particular app is going to be using, and then any identity information. So again, from a security point of view, being able to come and look at all of these in one place just improves the experience from the security team's point of view. As the screen says, there's kind of a couple of ways that this information can get populated. It can either be presented by the publisher of the app, which is in effect self certification and providing information. So that is just something to be aware of. And again, Microsoft do review this to a degree, but again, just something to be aware of. On the device side of things, Microsoft have added a little bit of enhancement around these notifications and alerts. So what these are is you can basically set up an alert that when a particular device or group of devices goes offline, you will receive a notification to a specific team and a channel within that team. These are quite new. These only turned up in my tenant yesterday, and it's not at the moment. The rules aren't loading in, so I'm going to give it a few more days and see if it settles down. But it's basically kind of some enhanced alerting. So if you have either a lot of meeting room devices or a lot of areas with hot desks where the phones are kind of logged in as common accounts, you can get some visibility around those accounts and those devices and whether they are logged in, or whether someone needs to go and physically inspect them and find out what's going on. This to me feels like a very much version 1.0. I think it's going to get enhanced and improved, especially around the conditions you can currently trigger or the conditions you can trigger on. At the moment, it's pretty limited. And I guess the only note on these, at the moment, there isn't any control as to where those notifications go. when you create the first rule, a team is automatically created called admin alerts and notifications, and there is a channel automatically created within that called monitoring alerts, and that is where your alerts get sent to. Again, my feeling is that as we get improvement and enhancements to the device rules, we're going to get the option to send those alerts to wherever we want. The alerts themselves, this is kind of the information that is going to appear in that smart card when it gets delivered to the channel. So just the kind of key stuff, what device went offline, when it went offline, and they're your kind of two key bits. So if all the devices in a single building suddenly go offline at the same time, it gives you some idea of what there's a building problem rather than a specific device problem. Again, just helps you get a bit of a jump start on the diagnosis of problems across the estate. Multi-Geo. So again, this is one of those things some customers have been asked for, specifically customers with offices in multiple geographic locations and in multiple compliancy regimes. So a lot of or other Microsoft services have already been able to do this multi-geo. So the two big ones were Exchange SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. Microsoft Teams has now kind of been added into that mix, and what it'll do is based on either users or a group's DLP, which is preferred data location. It will put it into a in-country or in-region data store. And again, this is a compliance feature. It does require an additional license, so have a chat with your security and compliancy team, see if there is a requirement for this, and if so, we can kind of walk through what the additional licensing looks like from this. And again, as the slide says, there's kind of three data scenarios which raise questions most commonly, which is where does end user chat go? And again, it comes back to the DLP that the user has set up on them. For meetings, it is the organizers DLP which is used to determine where that meeting data goes. And for channels, it's a bit of an interesting one. So it actually inherits it from the M365 group, which is the kind of core part of the team from a ACL point of view. So yeah, again, it's just being aware of kind of how those different scenarios and types of data are handled. If you are going to start using this, it does mean that you have to have that preferred PDL set. It's just a attribute on users and groups in Azure AD. So it's relatively straightforward to set up and configure that. So yeah, as I said, customers have been asking for this for a while. It very much comes down to what your compliancy framework and requirements are, whether you need to be kind of exploring this or not. And yeah, on the slide, you've got the list of the kind of geos which are available. So for us, the important one is going to be the United Kingdom, and that's kind of on there. So that was the security enhancements which caught my eye over the last quarter. And then we're kind of just going to finish up with devices and what's new and shiny in this space. So intelligent speakers are an interesting one. These are specifically for Teams room systems. And what so stepping back for a moment. So meetings have had live live transcription where they can accredit the person speaking to a particular block of text. For a meeting where everyone is joining directly from their own Teams client, it's relatively straightforward to work out that attributing text to a particular speaker. However, in the context of a room, it gets a bit more challenging, where you potentially have 5 or 6 people, all of which you are going to talk. This is where the intelligent speakers come in. So these are devices which you will plug into your existing room system. And what they're doing is they are identifying a particular person within that room. and attributing particular bits of text to them. So what that means is even if you have a meeting room joining the system, you can still get accurate transcription going on rather than just it being attributed to the meeting room. So again, especially for my friends in project management office where they record meetings and then use them to kind of build the meeting notes and briefs, it's a good enhancement for them. Better together. So this is a functionality which was around with Poly devices back in Skype um, days, where you could basically, in effect, tether together one of their Skype-enabled phones with the desktop PC and the Skype client running on the desktop PC. Um, this is going to do a very similar thing, but it's going to be pairing together phones and displays. So the phones being the kind of standalone IP phones, and the Teams displays being the almost tablet-sized standalone devices, which you can get and run the Teams app. And it would be a case of audio running on the phone, but any content sharing would come through on the Teams display. So again, if you've got a scenario where you're using both, it's an interesting feature that's coming through. Realistically, I think people tend to have one or the other, so we'll see how useful that turns out to be. Actually, in the devices space itself, um, some Microsoft accessories in the form of headsets and cameras have been certified. So if you live purely in the Microsoft kind of hardware ecosystem, you've got some additional options there. New headset from EPOS. So again, just expanding out the range and options and price points of devices available to you. And again, choice is always good. I'm still very much in the Poly and to an extent Jabra side of the world, as that's their kind of my go-to. But more manufacturers definitely welcome. A new Teams room system. So this is or Teams room system on Android. This is the kind of rebranding of the old collaboration bars, and it's just another offering from Logitech. So again, if you are in the Logitech ecosystem for your device or for your video and conference room devices, it's another option in there for you. Again, the Android-based ones tend to be a little bit on the cheaper side, which again is always good, and they tend to be targeted at the small to medium-sized rooms rather than the large boardroom type scenarios. On the topic of Teams Rooms bundles on Windows, I guess to give them their full title, there's a couple more bundles coming out from HP and Lenovo. So again, these are very, very on spec with all the other bundles where you get a micro PC and you get some sort of controller or input device. So again, if you are using HP for your rooms or Lenovo, couple more options in there. Brutally honest, they're all going to do the same thing. They're all in effect going to be running Windows. They're all going to have the Microsoft provided app on them. So then it just comes down to preferences for specific manufacturers, and from a look and feel and performance point of view, which ones you prefer and which ones you want to go with. So that's all the updates team-wise. We now have the obligatory marketing slide, which is we've talked about all the great things. How can Ultima help? And the answer to this is we can help as much or as little as you want us to. We're happy to kind of do art of the possible type sessions where we'll jump on with either IT or key stakeholders within the business and walk through Microsoft Teams in all its glory. So again, that would be kind of broken down in the similar way to this one is around meetings, calling, collaboration, and kind of security. We can help with actual designing and planning your migrations. If you are greenfield coming in, we can help kind of with those as well. User adoption services. So once you are actually ready and deploying, we can help with end user training, IT training, admin training, those kind of things. Again, migration services, moving you from wherever you are to Microsoft Teams. Governance and compliance, we seem to be doing a lot of this at the moment, which is coming in and auditing Teams environments, providing information around life cycle for Teams and best practices in those kind of areas. Then telephony integration. So whether that is using calling plans or direct routing or Operator Connect, and then just kind of general integration services on the meeting room side of things to help you get up and running there. And then the kind of standard health checking offerings around checking your existing environment from a network point of view, your M365 configuration in general, and those kind of activities. So, yeah, that is all I have for you for this session. Thank you very much for your time. And hopefully there was at least a couple of bits of new information in there which will kind of help you and is something you want to explore.